October 7th happened in order for Israel to bomb the living daylights out of Gaza so that the Palestinians could show this to the world and then convince gullible losers, gullible people who don't understand anything about this. Well, see, look what these horrible people did.
Mainstream media gives you the impression that there is nothing good about America. In direct contrast to that, my podcasts will prove by examples that America has always been and still is the land of opportunity for everyone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. Today, we're going to explore one of the most important questions facing our country. What happened to the America of the 1960s? That was the era of the Beach Boys, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones, when there was, for the most part, no racial division, no animosity between Republicans and Democrats, and certainly an era when there were no men in women's locker rooms. We were all happy to be Americans back in the 60s. Well, my guest today is Bill Whittle. He has spent most of his adult life answering the question, what happened to our country? And we'll talk about how we can possibly reclaim it. First, a bit of background on Bill. He is a writer, speaker, and filmmaker. He studied theater at the University of Florida and then began his career as a television editor and producer. He worked on projects for the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, and National Geographic. In 2002, he launched a popular blog, Eject, 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 producing essays and combining storytelling, history, and philosophy to defend the core values that built this country. And he became one of the founding voices of PJ Media, where he created popular video series including Afterburner and Firewall. Bill is one of the most thoughtful and articulate defenders of liberty in America today. His writing and commentary combine logic, humor, and storytelling to remind us why our country and our values are so special and worth protecting and preserving. Bill, welcome to Life Lessons with Dr. Bob.
It's great to be here, Dr. Bob, and I was especially happy to hear you mention the Beach Boys. I've argued that you could make a compelling case for making Fun, Fun, Fun the national anthem of this country. I think that'd go a long way to get us back on the right track. I love that song.
Right.
I love it. I love the whole song. I love the whole vibe.
The whole Beach Boys. And, I have Spotify, and I play the best of the Beach Boys every morning when I'm shaving. It was a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was just an innocent sort of just love of freedom. Fun, 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 and all of these kind of that California beach sound before California became, the Crimson Republic. But that was all about just actual freedom. You had teenagers and they've got enough money for gas for their cars. They're souping up their own cars. They're buying $200 junkers and they're turning them into these, magic machines. They're putting sweat equity into them. And I remember clearly when I turned 16, you could, for minimum wage, for a week or two, you could go for 5-6 day road trips and just go wherever you wanted to go with your friends in your car. And that was, and still is to me, completely hypnotic. It's unbelievable. That first car is
freedom.
And it's privacy, and it's yours, and it's ownership, and it's pride. And I don't know a single person my age who didn't wax their old, junker cars that they bought. Mine wasn't a junker. I bought a 1970 Camaro in 76. So it was a couple
pretty
years
good.
Old. Worked real hard for that car, and I loved it. But we would just get on the road and we would just go on road trips. And I think more to the point, our parents didn't have any problem with this. I got a job at the Miami Planetarium when I was 13. And on the weekends, we would work at the observatory on the roof of the Museum of Science. And we'd heard that they'd opened up a new observatory in Kitt Peak, Arizona. And we were in Miami. And just 2 or 3 of us said, we ought to go look at that. So 2 days later, we were packed and off we went, And
By car.
by car, and no money for motels because we didn't need motels. We just rotate the driving, just. And we're listening to music and just on our own, and that's how you develop real friendships with people. You spend real time with them, and you talk to them about things that really matter. And this is one of the things that I'm most concerned about with society today, is just how transient and intangible is the word I'm looking for, friendships are, since they all happen through devices.
Yep, there's very little face-to-face.
Very little.
I was, wherever you go, in a restaurant, you'll find four people sitting at a table.
All looking at their
all looking at their phones. It's very strange. And, the freedom, the surf mentality, the freedom of being out in the big waves, that contrasts, that was in the 60s and 70s so dramatically during COVID. As you may recall, they made it illegal to be on the beach.
Remember that?
I remember seeing...
Gavin Newsom arrested a man who was out surfing by himself because he wasn't wearing a mask 200 yards offshore.
Yeah.
Concept of titration, apparently not very, very familiar with this, and the dispersal of all of this. Yes, he's arrested because and the reason that surfer was arrested was because he was such a visible symbol of freedom.
And God knows other people may follow that if you don't clamp down on it. So we're going to talk about the loss of freedom. But we're going to talk about the challenges we face today in education, in the media, and in politics, and perhaps how we can begin to rebuild the moral and intellectual foundation of this country that we both love. You've often said that the American story isn't just about politics, it's about philosophy. It's a premise, a belief that our founders built a moral framework for our country around the key idea that our rights come from God, not from the government. So you've said that, and what do you know about our history that supports that view, that our founders believed in God?
Well, I think the United States of America was created so that individualism would have a place on earth, because it has never been tried before, and it's really never been tried since. I've done probably 200 public speaking events, and one of the problems about talking about history and politics is that the terms change over time. Today's conservatives, if you ask me why I'm a conservative, I would tell you I'm a conservative because I'm trying to conserve classical liberalism.
So in that regard, you're a liberal.
That's
we
right, yeah.
We are liberals.
The real liberals.
Right, the
Private
real
property,
liberals.
freedom of speech. All
So
of
that's
this.
why I don't, when people use the term on the press or whatever about liberals, I say, no, the
progressives.
people you're talking about are leftists.
That's right. Exactly.
That's the term to use, because liberals actually a positive attribute.
100%.
Right?
And when the Republican Party was founded, they were not only liberals, they were radicals. For the first 4 or 5 years of the Republican Party, the Democrats referred to them as the Black Republicans because the Republican Party was created specifically to end slavery, and so these definitions change. And I tried to find a definition that would be consistent throughout all of history and would apply to the Soviet Union, would apply to Nazi Germany, would apply to everything. And the only reasonable terms I could come up with were the individualists and the collectivists, and that has been consistent throughout time. So the United States was the first country to recognize the divine individuality and the uniqueness of every single person. For example, during the Battle of Agincourt, they would report back the losses on the British side, and it would turn out it would be the Earl of Sussex and the Duke of Warwick and 620 other guys. And those 620 other guys were exactly as real as these two people, but those people were individuals, and the 640, soldiers at arms just didn't even count. We don't think about people that way. And when you're trying to build a civilization that protects people, you can try to wall off different sectors of the population. But if you build a wall of protection around an individual, you can't have groups oppressed if the individual can't be oppressed. And that idea of individual protection and individual rights that precede the government, come from a higher source than the government. This is one of the things that even many conservatives don't really quite get. The First Amendment does not grant me the right to free speech. the First Amendment says that the government can't take my God-given right to free speech away from me. That's a profoundly different
Right. So
interpretation.
you when you're born, you have that right.
You enter the
The
world.
government didn't give it to us.
That's right, so they can't take it away.
Right.
And one of the most passionate discussions at the founding of this country was whether we needed a Bill of Rights or not. And the people who were arguing against it said, if we enumerate the rights that people have and the freedoms that they have from their government, then people will assume that those are the only things, when in point of fact, we have absolute freedom from the government infringing on these freedoms. And this experiment has worked out so spectacularly. We didn't just become the richest country in the world. We after World War II especially, we exported our politics and our economics and enriched the entire planet. If you look at worldwide poverty, right around 45, it just, not poverty.
The inverse.
Wealth,
right.
yeah. It's a dynamo, and it creates happiness. And that's why people who like to control other people have to see it destroyed.
So let's talk about God. Why do you think that the simple assumption that our rights came from God and not from government, why has that been forgotten by so many Americans today? Why? Is it because, as a country, we're becoming less religious, that there's a sharp decline in the belief in the existence of God? I remember a Time magazine cover, when Time was a popular magazine or profitable, and is God dead? Or God is dead. I remember that cover, and that was maybe 20, 30 years ago. So is it because of the decline in in religion, or is it because of radical changes in what our children are being taught in schools?
It's certainly that. There's no question whatsoever that the Frankfurt School of Marxist intellectuals that arose after World War I. I know you know this, but just very briefly for the audience. So Karl Marx comes along with this theory, which is a result of very early stage capitalism, because there were abuses in capitalism. You had children, coal miners, and so on, and there was something to complain about. But Marx comes along and says that that workers will take over the means of production and so on. World War I comes along. Lenin is in Switzerland. He's not in Russia. He can't get back to Russia. He's sitting on tenterhooks because he needs to get back to Russia for the revolution. But he's convinced, Lenin is convinced, that the Russian workers are going to align with the British workers and going to align with the German workers, and all of the workers are going to rise up against the kings and the empires and all the rest of it. And he couldn't understand why this theory trumped nationalism. What happened, obviously, was that the French workers were going to win the war for France, and the British workers were going to win it for England, and the German workers were going to win it for Germany. And so after World War I was over and Europe is in wreckage, the Marxists looked around and they said, what happened? Why didn't the workers unite? And they realized that those bastard capitalists had raised the standard of living of the workers so much that there was no longer any reason to have this. So if that had been you or me or any other reasonable person, we would say, well, there's no longer a need for Marxism, but they're about power and control. So what the Frankfurt School, it was originally called the Institute for Marxism, it's a little on the nose, but they were based in Frankfurt, Germany. And these philosophers got together and said, if we're going to have our communism, it's not going to come through the economy because the capitalists are making everybody's lives better. So we're going to have to think of another way to bring it in, and we're going to bring it in through the culture. And instead of it coming in through economics, it's going to come in through morality. And so they devised this theory of theirs. And the main part of the theory, critical theory, is the idea that you'll divide the country up into tribes, and you'll have all the tribes attack the center. They can never attack each other. They have to attack the center, the middle, the heart of the country. And we'll create these divisions, and instead of it being the proletariat, the new vanguard will be the dispossessed. And so began the process of
the oppressed.
Yes, so began the process of elevating victimhood to the highest possible standard of achievement in the culture.
Yeah. By being a victim,
how many boxes? Exactly. You are now the most powerful person there is under this theory, and it says an awful lot about the robustness of the American system that we've been able to take 50 or 60 years of unmitigated assault with both hands tied behind our back and still keep the boat afloat. But I think those days are over. I think the days of us fighting Marquis of Queensberry's rules where these leftists are done. I'm done. I'm done with that. Charlie Kirk put an end to that to me. Now we're going to play by your rules now, But America has to be...
The assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The assassination of Charlie Kirk for speaking his mind was horrific. But the reaction from the left to Charlie Kirk's murder was
jubilation.
Yeah, it was that rewired my brain.
Jubilation.
I said, these are not people we have a political difference with, and I can't get along with these people. I'm going to fight these people tooth and nail now. Now they're going to get it both barrels. We're not holding back anymore. I don't care if Donald Trump is overruling what some judge on some circuit court says. He's not. The judge doesn't have the power to do that. I want it. I want everything that we can legally do done now, and just plain take the gloves off.
That's it.
And we had a real similar situation with this. And like most people, I worry about when you're fighting monsters. One of the greatest dangers is you become the monster. Right? So,
well, you have the right. The difference is, when you're fighting a monster, I think you do have to become a monster. But unlike monsters, we can turn back.
Exactly.
That's
correct.
the difference.
Precisely correct.
Monsters can't. They only know how to be evil.
Precisely.
We know that we are inherently good, but we have to be willing to be evil.
So there are two great examples.
This happened World War II, bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There was an evil act. The people we killed, they were innocent. That was not a military installation on Hiroshima. It was a city of people, right? But we had to become evil to do an evil deed that saved the world.
It saved. I wouldn't be here without it. My father was a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. He got to Germany in April of '45, so he was there for the last 2 weeks of the war and never saw combat. He was an intelligence officer. But he fully expected to be shipped to Japan for Operation Downfall and Operation Olympic, the invasion of the Japanese.
2 or 3 million people would have been killed.
2 or 3 million Americans. And probably 8 or 10 million Japanese. And I did the first afterburner I ever did that got a lot of traction was about the history of the atomic bombs. And what the atomic bombs did was the atomic bombs finally gave Hirohito a reason to surrender. He needed something that he could present to this fanatical nation of his that said, it is impossible to resist this. We killed far more people in the firebombing of Tokyo than we had at Hiroshima, and we had leveled 50 or 60% of most of Japanese cities well before the atomic bombs. But this sharpness of this attack was what enabled Hirohito and the peace faction in his cabinet to say that no, this is the face-saving act that we need. We can't say that we just surrendered, but now there's been this inconceivable force unleashed against Japan, and so that's what ended the war. So it had to be done to end the war. I'm much more interested in the early part of World War II, because in Guadalcanal, when the Marines first met the Japanese, the first time American troops and Japanese really met en masse at Guadalcanal in 42. And during these first battles, the Japanese, the firefight would be over, and there'd be wounded Japanese on the battlefield, and they'd be calling for medical aid, and we would send corpsmen out. We'd send 2 or 3 corpsmen and a couple of Marine guards out, and this Japanese guy's got his guts blown open, is begging for water, and they give him water, and he uncorks a hand grenade and kills them all. There was a true
That's
story.
a metaphorical story?
No, this happened absolutely all the time. And this is also a true story. Shortly after most of the early fighting died down, there's a number of little islands between Guadalcanal and the rest of the islands in the Bismarcks. And one of these tiny little islands had a Japanese garrison on it, and they couldn't be supplied anymore since the Americans had basically landed on Guadalcanal. And so one day, after 3 weeks, the Japanese garrison there out some distance comes out, waves a white flag of surrender. So some young Marine captain or lieutenant or something says, these guys are starving. So he takes a Higgins boat and grabs 12 Marines, and they go over there to accept their surrender. These guys get out of the boat. They get onto the island. The guy's waving the white flag. When all the Marines are out of the boat, they drop the white flag. They open up with machine guns, kill everybody. Any Marines that had the globe and anchor on their arms had their arms hacked off with samurai swords. And after that, we didn't fight them on our rules anymore. Then we started fighting them by their rules. That's why that war was so brutal and so awful, because the Japanese did not have the same cultural ideas about surrender, mercy, any of that stuff. And we realized we can either fight them on their level or we'll lose. But it's exactly as you said. We're not monsters. And when the war was over, we went back to honorable rules of warfare.
Right. Yeah. And moving forward, Gaza is another example of Israel having to fight by ethical rules that are enforced by the Western culture. In reality, what should have happened on October 8th or the 9th was that Israel should have bombed all of Gaza and killed everyone. After all, they declared war on Israel, killed, maimed, raped, whatever, and it was time. And people say, well, there are innocent people in Gaza. There may be a few, but most of them, even today when there are surveys done, they say they support Hamas. These people, and maybe it's not genetic that it happened that way, but through years of indoctrination and generations of indoctrination, the only thing these people want to do is kill Jews. And we should have wiped them all out. And that would have been the end of this Palestinian bullshit.
Well, let me give you my perspective on this, because this is I certainly agree with the sentiment. The defeat of Japan in World War II was the best thing that ever happened to Japan. Their absolute, utter, crushing defeat and their acceptance of the fact that we had been defeated was the best thing that happened to Japan, because they were living under this militaristic, feudal system where people just being murdered. By the way, and I can absolutely prove this, more people in World War II were killed by samurai swords than there were by atomic bombs. Many, many millions more people killed by samurai swords by what the Japanese did in China for 4 or 5 years before World War II really started. But yes, in order for there to be a lasting peace, the one side has to accept the fact that they've lost.
There has to be defeat.
That's right.
You don't end a war by negotiation.
The Confederacy could not have been defeated by defeating the Confederate armies in the field. The Confederacy had to be defeated by Sherman marching to the sea and then marching up the coast and making it clear to everybody that this is over and you have lost. The thing that is so unbelievably obvious to both of us, but not to so many people, is that the reason that Hamas launched the attacks on October 7th was because they wanted to parade their own dead children in front of the TV cameras of the world. That's what terrorism is. When you sacrifice your own children and your own people and your own innocence in order to gain political sway over people that don't have any education or any sense of causality, who started it, who's right and wrong, October 7th happened in order for Israel to bomb the living daylights out of Gaza so that the Palestinians could show this to the world and then convince gullible losers, gullible people who don't understand anything about this. Oh, see, look what these horrible people did. And it's you can reduce that all the way down to the same exact situation where somebody breaks into your house at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like, if you didn't want to get shot, you probably shouldn't have been crawling through my bedroom window. And they can't get this through there. But this is the thing about terrorists. And we saw this in Iraq, where we would have American soldiers putting their own bodies between themselves and Iraqi civilians who were being shot at by other Iraqis because they want the television power. Look, first time I ever heard of the Palestinians in my life, I was 13 years old, and it was the 1972 Munich Olympics, and everything was going great, and I thought Olga Korbut was kind of cute. And then at the end of this thing, you find out these people who have come in under this sacred flame of truce have rounded up these 13 Israeli athletes, and we'd never seen anything like this before. And I remember so clearly where they're saying, no, they're all gone. They had a rescue attempt. They threw a hand grenade in one of the helicopters and machine gunned everybody else. They had all the faces of the Israeli athletes. And I thought, what kind of people do this? Well, powerless people who have no sense of regard for human life. That's who does this. Dead enders and bitter clingers who know that
But it seems in our society, we believe there's no such thing as evil. There's a reason, and we have to understand the reason, and we have to negotiate with them. And negotiating with Hamas, you can't negotiate with evil. You have to kill evil.
this is part of the
There's a
Marxist,
problem.
part of the Marxist goal of the elevation of the victim, right? So Israel is a phenomenally successful country that's been built by hard work. And so even if Israel is morally correct, they appear to be stronger, which by the modern definitions of morality, which are the modern
fair.
definition of morality on the left is if you are weaker, you are automatically morally correct. The weaker
matter what
party
you
is
do.
automatically morally correct.
right.
And that's just absolute nonsense.
That's in our society
Absolute nonsense.
today. That's what we're seeing.
So they can't make this about good and evil. They have to make it about strong and weak, and
Oppressed and oppressors.
right.
Right.
And so if you're stronger than somebody else is militarily, then you have to be evil. And this is how they invert morality. The
this
best
whole concept of a proportional response. Since when, in war, should things be proportional?
well, proportional response gets you Vietnam and 11 years of conflict.
Right.
We could have ended that war. We could have ended the Vietnam War in 1966. We could have ended the war in 8 weeks if we wanted to. In fact, just as the war was winding down, when President Nixon relieved Westmoreland and replaced him with Creighton Abrams, by then we'd drawn down, we had almost 500,000 guys in Vietnam. By this point, we're down to about 80,000 or something. And Creighton Abrams said to Richard Nixon in 1972, he said, "Mr. President, we don't need more men. Westmoreland and McNamara were constantly saying we need more troops and more troops." He had a computer program. And Abrams said, "Sir, in country right now, we have the troops and the armor. We're going to take our armor right up the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We're going to park our tanks in the
Lethality.
square in downtown Hanoi, and we're going to dictate the terms of the surrender of the North Vietnamese. And we could do it right now." And they could have. But by 1972, the political will had gone, and
Right.
and everything had gotten over by the sickly pail of thought. This is what Shakespeare referred to as Hamlet. When you overthink something to the point that you can no longer take action, you become a coward, and you lose the moral clarity. And this is endemic in our society. Although I have to say, Donald Trump has been absolutely masterful at showing how little he cares about what people think of him. And that's the only power they have over us, Dr. Bob. They have no power over us other than our own desire not to be seen as racist or homophobic or Islamophobic or whatever.
Or unfair. So when did this start? When did things change in the American system of in our schools? Let's talk about the schools.
Well, I mentioned the Frankfurt School being in Germany, and as the Nazis started to gain power, a number of those philosophers were Jewish, but they were all communists, and clearly that Nazi Germany wasn't looking good for them. So they came to the United States and they put down their roots at Columbia University.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yes, Columbia University.
That's why it's one of the worst, and it's been one of the worst for years.
Exactly. And so this you have to hand to them. The left has no religion. The left has no hobbies. The left has no families. The left has no any kind of life at all. Everything is politics for a leftist. The people who are obsessed with power and control are drawn to leftism because it's about authority. They never sleep. They never rest. They have a 100-year plan, and they're ready to put their money where their mouth is. So the first thing they realized that they would do was they would infiltrate the universities, and if they could,
This started when?
No, about 1960s,
Right.
early
Okay.
60s.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
I think there was a student rebellion. I think it was at the Yale Law Library, and I think some radical leftists barricaded themselves in. I think it was about 64, 66, somewhere around there. And the university caved. If they had expelled those kids and put them in jail,
Be over.
yeah, would have been over.
Right.
But if you can control the universities, then you can teach the next generation who will go on to become teachers. Take over journalism first so you can control the news narrative. You go after entertainment so that you can control the hearts and minds.
We're going to go into
And
that.
then you go after education so that you can indoctrinate the next generation. That is a long-term vision. And to deny that the left has a commitment to and a
But who leads it? I mean, we say the left, which we understand is a concept or lots of people. But was there a leader who said that? Let's spend our time doing this and that, and then
No, I don't think so. It's tempting to think there's some guy with a a mustache and a goatee and tapping out something on Morse code in a basement.
It's not that.
No,
it's in their blood to take over.
Marxism has an appeal to a certain kind of person, and the people who Marxism appeals to are people who are smarter than average, but also lazier than average. And so what you end up with is an academic or an intellectual who has read Rousseau and all of this other stuff. And he looks down the street and he sees Jim Bob, who's got a Chevy dealership, and this guy's worth $30 million, and he, with all of this education, is dirt poor. And he says, this is unjust. What he doesn't realize is Joe Bob is providing value to people because people like to drive cars, and what he's got is worth nothing. But people like that are attracted to the philosophy. So everybody got attracted to this philosophy of egalitarianism. But what that egalitarianism was a fig leaf for their own desire to control people. Because if you actually looked, you found out that Lenin didn't go back to being an obscure lawyer after the revolution. Fidel Castro didn't go back to being an unknown guy. Fidel Castro had $800 million in his personal bank account when he died. His people were boiling stones for soup. He had $800 million. Suckers.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What was the guy in Venezuela?
Chavez.
Yes, Hugo Chavez. His daughter has taken over many of the state industries. She's worth $4 billion now. And the suckers keep buying it, right? They keep buying it because in this world, they're going to be in control. It appeals to intellectuals. The American Revolution is unique because the people that launched that revolution were the people who the revolution should have been directed against. They were the aristocracy. They were the wealthy men. They were men with power and prestige. They weren't a bunch of unknown radicals running around.
Interesting. They took the biggest risk because they were already comfortable.
Because they were committed to the idea.
Yeah.
And
amazing.
And you look at the Russian Revolution. All of these names are pseudonyms. Lenin wasn't his. I mean, Vladimir Lenin's. I'm sorry, I got a little confused there. Trotsky is not his real name. Molotov is not his real name. Stalin is not his real name. These are criminals who've spent a lifetime of intrigue underground and who launched this revolution in the name of the workers. And the first thing they did was break up the union workers, the workers' unions. It was all about power. But it's couched in a kind of idyllic vision, but it mostly appeals to people's envy, right? What socialism and communism really does is says, that guy's got a bunch of nice stuff.
And you don't.
I don't. We're going to take his stuff and give it to you. And that way you don't have to work for it. And it's a lie, and it never works. And when you're given something and you don't earn it.
Well, there's a great story my father told me because I grew up with a great dad, hardworking dad, patriot in America. And the story is that a man is attending a communist rally, and the speaker on the soapbox is talking about the underclass and the worker. And he says, and the speaker says, if I have 2 factories, I'm going to give one to you. And if I have 2 freight trains, I'm going to give one to you. And a man out in the audience says, what about shirts? The guy and the speaker says, no, I happen to have 2 shirts.
Exactly.
They'll willing to give away everything they don't have.
I was trying to explain the appeal of socialism and envy to young people, and this back during the Tea Party days. And I came up with a thought experiment that I really like a lot. So let's say, forget about grand philosophy, just a regular daily example. Let's say that you work in an insurance company and you've worked in the same cubicle for 35 years or something, right? And you're sitting there, it's a Friday, and you're getting ready to clock out, and all of a sudden the president and the CFO come up to your cubicle and say, hey, Jim, you got a second? I'd like to talk to you. Yes. Jim, you've been working here for 35 years. We've seen you come in early. We've seen you stay late. We've seen you work weekends without pay. We've seen how much dedication you've given to this country, to this company, and so on. And as a small token of our gratitude, we'd like to present you with this check for $250,000, and the taxes have already been paid on it. Just as a means of gratitude. Have a great weekend. And they walk away. So what's your reaction to that going to be? Well, you're going to be ecstatic. You're just going to be over the moon. All of these things that you'd always wanted were just, kids' college education, or a new addition to the house, or a swimming pool, or a tour around the world, or whatever. All these things, you're filled with joy. You're elated. So you go to the people in the next cubicle, your friends and workers, and you say, you won't believe what just happened to me. The president and the CFO came by and said, I've been working like crazy, and he gave me a check for $250,000. And the rest of the people look at you and they go, yeah, they came to all of us too, and they gave us checks for $500,000.
Oh.
What? Yeah, we all got checks for $500,000.
Now he's pissed.
Now what happens? You are now $250,000 richer
Less.
than you were 10 seconds ago.
Yeah.
And are you ecstatic now? No, now you're really angry because Margaret, who's drunk and who you have to fill out reports for, she gets $500,000. I get a measly $250,000. And you could set it up so that if there were 50 people in that office, and if the deal was written so that everybody takes a check or nobody gets a check, there are people, honest to God, there are people who will say, I would rather not have $250,000 of gain than watch somebody get $500,000.
There are people, right?
And so what is nothing but pure good, $250,000 drops out of the sky,
turns into shit.
Something that makes you furious and angry, and you're practically ready to refuse to take it. And that's because nobody worked for it. If it turned out that Margaret, let's say, got $500,000, but you know that she slept on the floor next to her desk and worked weekends for 20 years, you'd say, well, she earned it. But when things are given to you as a gift like that, then all of a sudden, it's all about how come I didn't get as much as this person got? Because there's no connection between the effort and the reward. And so this is what powers Marxism and leftism and socialism in this country.
Anger.
I talked to a woman. I did an event once. And there was this rumpled-looking woman in the front row. You could just spot him a mile away, and she was, it was a conservative group. She was, I'm a socialist, and I said, are you saying that you would rather see poor people live poorer as long as rich people had to live that same way? Absolutely.
And she said that.
100%.
I believe it.
100%. And how do you argue with people like that? You can't. It's an irrational.
You have to take control. You
Right.
can't let those people make decisions for us.
That's precisely.
Let's talk about culture.
Sure.
You've said that politics is downstream from culture, and that culture is driven by the stories we tell and the TV shows and the movies that we create. Now, I fondly recall the TV shows that I watched as a kid, like I Remember Mama, Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie and Harriet, and Father Knows Best. Shows that had an optimistic theme in which often included a positive message about morality and the importance of family. As someone who has a lot of experience in film and digital media, Bill, how do you view today's storytelling landscape?
This is the most important subject of all. First of all, it was my close friend Andrew Breitbart who coined the term politics is downstream of culture. Conservatives tend to be pretty practical-minded people, and they go about their businesses and they have their own lives and so on. So let's imagine that American culture is just this giant ship in the middle of the ocean. Conservatives think that the pop culture is a compartment on the ship. So here's pop culture, here's the military, here's religion, here's this, all of the different compartments in our society. But that's not true. The ship is the pop culture, and everything lives inside the culture. When I say the pop culture, it's just another term for the
Today.
qualities that every society has. Their shared ethical systems, their shared values, their shared history, their shared mythology. That's the ship. And the genius of the left is to understand that if you can control the culture, you will control everything else. It doesn't matter who gets elected, because the people you are taking representatives from will be imbued with that culture. So they made an effort to change the culture. And once you change the culture, everything else after that follows. If you made a change in the culture, you can put up with these horrifically awful schools that we have. You can put up with corrupt politicians. You can put up with all that because the entire ship is rusting now. The culture is everything. And any money that or any resources that aren't spent on the ship and rather on things like, well, get out the vote, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do this, or education reform, all of it. It's all important, but none of it is essential, and the culture is. So what have they done? You mentioned Father Knows Best, for example. If they made that show again today, they'd call it who?
Yeah.
What's a father? What's a father?
Right. And why does a father know best?
Right. The fathers now are just there to be idiots for the women to explain how things actually work. So what the left has done is they have gone into our common mythology, and they have systematically destroyed everything that we believed in. And have you ever been hypnotized before?
No.
See, that's where you're wrong. You've been hypnotized hundreds of thousands of times. Mm-hmm. So this is really important to understand. So if you and I were to go to a Saturday matinee, let's say, of a monster movie, and we're sitting at a theater in a mall someplace, and it's Saturday afternoon, and we got popcorn, and there's a screen, and we got a big giant Pepsi in our hand, and so on. And 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the movie, this vampire comes out of the dark and shows his fangs and so on. You leap out of your seat. Well, you leap out of your seat because you're not really in a mall on a Sunday afternoon. Mm-hmm. You're in a dungeon in 1820 in Romania. Mm-hmm. That's where your mind is. I was a theater major, which is, as I'm sure you will appreciate, guaranteed pathway to financial success. But in the theater, we call this the willing suspension of disbelief. So what it means is when I go into a movie theater, I'm going to lower my critical thinking, all of my barriers, and I'm going to allow me to believe in a galaxy far, far away, or werewolves or vampires or whatever. So whenever you're dealing with entertainment, you are in a hypnotic state where your critical facilities are intentionally suppressed by you.
Yes.
To take a ride on the story.
Right.
So whatever you put into the story goes past your cortex without even slowing down, goes directly into your subconscious. So I can prove to you that you've been hypnotized because I'll start a sentence, you'll finish it for me. Ready? Look, up in the sky.
It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Superman.
Right. So what does that mean, Dr. Bob? What it means is you didn't have to look that up. You didn't have to check on Google. Yeah. What it means is that by watching those Superman TV shows, you had it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman in your head, but everything that Superman represents went in your head too.
American way.
Yes. So Superman is unlimited power, constrained only by his own decency and morality. Mm-hmm. His power comes from Krypton, but his decency comes from Middle America. It's Jonathan Kent who made Superman a good man. If Superman had landed in the Soviet Union or in Nazi Germany, we would have had a whole different story. So all of the values of Superman and all of the values that Hollywood used to represent, like in things like It's a Wonderful Life and in all of this, all of that stuff went into your subconscious and formed your belief system. It affected how you vote. It affected how you spend resources. It affected what party you support. All of it. If you can change that and make something that people are willing to watch and lower their suspension of disbelief, then whatever message you attach to that entertainment is going to go in there too. Now, I've done this with young people, and I've hummed the first couple bars of Family Guy, and they can finish it the same way as Superman. And Family Guy is the most nihilistic, cynical, un-American, anti-American, anti-life. It's just plain awful. And that cynicism and nihilism and doubt gets planted inside people. They don't even realize it. I'll give you a great real example. So in 1964, they made a movie called The Manchurian Candidate.
Sorry.
Okay. So it's Frank Sinatra, and the idea is that an American serviceman has been kidnapped by the Chinese communists, and they brainwashed him to give him a special cue, and he will then assassinate the president of the United States. So that was the 64 version. They made it again, I think it was 2009 with Denzel Washington. This time the bad guys were the Manchurian Corporation.
Oh.
Because if you're going to run an American company, what better name than Manchurian Corporation?
Sure.
But it was the Manchurian Corporation. So who's the villain now? Is it the Red Chinese? No, it's American successful businessmen that are generating wealth for everybody. And one of the reasons that there's so much belief in these conspiracy theories and the things that you and I have seen since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. It's an exploding lapel microphone that the Mossad planted on him, or was a team of shooters. It's all people have come to believe it because for the last 30 or 40 years, they've been fed nothing but entertainment that has a twist at the end. The writer will set you up to think this is the obvious conclusion, but nope, it's a twist. And I was a jury foreman 10 years ago even, and it was a cut and dried case. And I explained, this is what happened. They said, no, that can't be it. That's too obvious. It can't be true. It's too obvious.
I see.
Who really did it? I know all the data and the evidence indicates that this person did it, but that's proof that they didn't do it. And
Interesting.
Yes. It's proof that they couldn't have done it because all the evidence points to them. And when
people set it up that way, so
because
it can't.
they've grown up on nothing but these mystery movies and nothing but these cynical TV shows. And as a writer, it's nice to be able to throw a twist on the end of things. But when
Everything's a conspiracy.
Yes, and the more obvious the evidence is, the less likely it is to be true as far as they're concerned.
This evil monster who killed Charlie Kirk, he told his father about it. His father had to call the police. What could be more clear? But people that I know were arguing with me. No, it's bullshit. He couldn't have done it because it's 200 yards, and watch this video and it shows it's something else. It's not that. He's just set up.
He's a patsy.
He's a patsy.
You know who killed who killed John F. Kennedy?
I thought it was Lee Harvey Oswald.
It was Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone, and there's no question about it. The evidence for it is overwhelming, but people will not accept it because, first of all, it gives them a sense of privileged knowledge, right? Like I'm aware of things that you aren't because I've read this.
You haven't read deeply enough
right.
into it.
But one of the things that Gerald Posner wrote a book called Case Closed, which simply demolishes any theory other than Lee Harvey Oswald. But he said that the reason that there was such an emotional attachment to the Kennedy assassination being connected to something bigger was that it was intolerable that this handsome, powerful, magnetic, world-changing person could have been taken out by an absolute loser.
Right.
But if you look at the history of assassinations, they're all losers. The guy who shot Reagan wanted to impress
Jodie Foster,
an actress, right?
Yeah.
John Wilkes Booth was a failed younger brother of a very, very successful actor who had this inferiority complex, and the guy who shot Charlie Kirk was
a nobody.
They're all nobodies, and we can't handle the idea that a nobody could take out somebody of that stature. It offends our sense of cosmic justice.
And evidently, the guy who shot President Trump or
another
who killed him,
loser.
Another loser, right?
Right. That's what people do, and people
refuse to accept it.
Yes, they can't. They can't process.
All right, so let's get back to the culture and movies, entertainment. How did the left take control of that industry? How was that possible?
Well, part of it was that I remember I was quite young when I heard this. My dad was the Greatest Generation, and the culture that they consumed and which was generated for them in the 1950s was exceedingly bland. I mean, Perry Como and guys like this. And somebody explained to me, I said, why is this music, and the Lawrence Welk show was the most popular show in America. And I was, what is it about this? And somebody said to me, people like your dad have heard enough loud noises in the course of their life.
Interesting.
Yeah, they've been under artillery fire. They've been shot at. They've seen their friends.
And they went through the Depression.
Yeah, and the Depression. But they just came back from seeing their friends turn into pink mist. They don't need any more loud noises or any more excitement. But what that led to was, it led to a Hollywood that produced films like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and Brigadoon and all of this really kind of boring, vanilla kind of stuff. And along comes the left with Bonnie and Clyde. And now with Bonnie and Clyde, you've got the handsomest man in the world, one of the best looking women in the world, and there's lots of action and they're romanticized. Bonnie and Clyde in real life were cold-blooded murderers. Yeah. But Bonnie and Clyde, the movie, turned them into romantic heroes and turned them into people to be admired, tragic heroes who were misunderstood by the system. And they understood the power of the anti-hero in a culture that had become so homogeneously like slathering on the virtue. We were a virtuous society. And so it was new and it was different. And you could make that case for Easy Rider. You could make that case for all of these films. The Godfather is an incredibly great movie. And so is Bonnie and Clyde, for that matter. But I mean, The Godfather is about a group of murdering criminals that does nothing but murder people throughout the course of the movie. But you identify with them because they're well written and they're human and they're portrayed by great actors. So this rise of the anti-hero started to set up a culture where crime was glamorized and law enforcement was seen as something that the squares do. That's an interesting word, glamour, by the way. Glamour originally, as originally applied, meant a spell that would be cast over you. A glamour was something that you would put in front of somebody's eyes to deceive them so that they couldn't see the truth of what was behind. And they're masters of glamour. My friend Evan Sayed, who wrote a book called The Kindergarten of Eden about leftist philosophy, he said that leftists have tremendous rhetorical intelligence, and they do. They have unbelievable rhetorical intelligence. They know how to spin a story. They know how to set all of this up. And what I've seen in the last 20 years is the absolute destruction, not just the destruction. This is an important point. So there have been two society-changing pieces of entertainment in my lifetime. One of them was Star Trek, and the other one was Star Wars. These changed generations. The number of people that came up to James Doohan, who played Scotty on the original Star Trek show, during the course of his life, he said hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came up to them and said, I became an engineer because of you. I became a doctor because of you. So these two things existed in the culture. And the left didn't just destroy them. This is really important to understand. They undermined them. I got to explain this. Let's take Luke Skywalker. Okay, so Luke Skywalker is a farm boy. It's a typical Conrad journey of the hero. He's a farm boy. He's naive and so on. Destiny picks him out. He goes on this journey. He has a darkness of the soul, and he finally overcomes his own internal demons, and he becomes the hero at the end of this. So at the end of the first three movies, Luke Skywalker is a Jedi master. He throws his sword away. He doesn't kill his father. He thinks his father is redeemable. That's how we leave Luke Skywalker. But when they brought him back in the last three sequels, in the second of the last movies, The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker, much older man now, obviously, is living on an island. He's a hermit. He's running away from life. He's renounced the Jedi Order. He's a coward. He's an attempted murderer. He's impotent in the face of this young woman who does everything he does better than him. And so what they did was they didn't just kill him. They destroyed him. They destroyed who he was. So you can't have a hero who's going to take a couple of thrown together spaceships and destroy the evil empire. That has to go. So they couldn't just kill him. They had to defame him. That's the word I'm looking for. They had to defame him and show he was never what people thought he was. And they've done it with Star Trek, they've done it with Star Wars, and this is this enormous sucking vacuum in the middle of the culture where heroism used to be. People, I think in England, Jedi was like the second or third most popular religion that people put down on census forms. People's lives were built around these things. So they had to be destroyed. And
because they were heroes in the old sense of the hero. They were good.
Right. And so what the left did was they tried to take their values, inject them into Star Wars by bringing their values in, but nobody bought it because their values are antithetical to heroism. So the great irony is that the entertainment business is probably the most liberal or progressive leftist, it's most leftist business in the country. But entertainment is absolutely conservative because entertainment is about an individual. I've used this line to death. I love it, and I've just worn it into the ground. But the reason you can tell that entertainment is conservative is because nobody's going to go pay to see a James Bond movie where James Bond confronts the evil villain armed with a strongly worded letter from the United Nations, and drive off in a Prius at a reasonable speed. Right? Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see committees. There's no movies made about political movements. There's no string of sequels about guys who were community organizers, right? It's always about heroic. It's about a man with a gun saving a beautiful woman in a hot car. And that's irreducible. That's how we're wired. So the left is at an impasse now. They've destroyed the culture, the pop culture, but they have not been able to replace it because they don't have a value system people want to buy.
That people want to buy. The left preaches to us about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that hiring and promotions should be based on skin color, not on merit. They preach that mathematics is racist, that there are more than two sexes, and that boys need tampons, and that it's fine for men to share locker rooms with women. America seems to have lost its moral compass. Why do so many Americans, Bill, stay silent when they see things being promoted which contradict their common sense and their deepest values?
Well, this is the one real genius of the left. Of all of the things that the Frankfurt School and cultural Marxism understood, this is the most important thing. Before I get to that, Gandhi talked about passive resistance to the British Empire. That's how India got its independence from. But Gandhi famously said, this never would have worked against the Nazis. The Nazis would have just taken me out back and shot me in the head. The British were fundamentally decent people, and Gandhi was appealing to their decency, and that's why he was able to do it. And the same thing is true with us. We are not. We are too decent. They've understood they could use our decency against us.
Yep.
If
So
I
it's
have an
happening
opinion
in this country.
If I have an opinion on something and somebody says you're a racist for saying so, almost everybody will shut up because they're not racist. If they were racists, they would embrace it. You know, nobody went up to a Ku Klux Klan rally and said, I think what you guys are saying about black people is a little bit inflammatory. I said, don't you see the pointy hat? Don't you see the burning cross? That's how real racists behave. But decent people will shut up because they don't want to be perceived as bad people because they're not. And this is the essence of what political correctness is. If critical theory is the sword that cuts the country up into pieces, political correctness is the shield that defends against counterattacks. Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. What you're saying is nonsense. Well, that's a racist thing to say. Oh, I guess I better shut up then.
I better shut up.
Yeah. So that's how it works. They use our own decency against us successfully, but that victimhood card has reached its limit. And no one's accepting it anymore. It's played out. It's done.
Bill, when you watch the news on mainstream media today, you see double standards and selective outrage against conservatives and their values. What do you think is the most dangerous effect of the leftist media on the average American citizen?
Antagonism. The reason that the United States has been so successful, and the reason that the left has to destroy the United States in order to succeed when they couldn't succeed economically, as we talked about earlier, is that the essence of the United States, and it used to be on our money until they changed it, and I wish they'd change it back, frankly, is e pluribus unum.
Yeah.
It's the idea out of many one. And that wasn't a salad. That didn't mean that there would be Hungarian Americans or Armenian Americans or Jewish Americans or Black Americans. It meant you were an American. You would give up your old identity in order to become this new person. And we were all these new people together, and we could disagree about things, but we had a fundamental love and understanding of the essence of what makes this country great. And so all of the education has been to destroy e pluribus unum and to divide the country up into tribes and have those tribes never attack each other. You'll never hear, at least as far as leftist orthodoxy is concerned, you'll never hear the LGBTQ crowd attacking blacks because they're both of their jobs is to attack the middle, is to attack a traditional.
And you'll never see women's groups attacking the Muslim groups.
Right, and so when you have Queers for Palestine, you realize just exactly how insane this whole thing is.
That's exactly where we're going. Yeah.
Okay, so what they do is divide and generate rage. One of the things that's really disturbing to find out is that social media algorithms discovered quite a long time ago that, especially with shorts, that the purpose of the algorithm is to keep you on the platform for as long as possible. But Facebook and X and all the rest of it found that there's only one thing that will keep you interested, one thing that will keep you on the platform longer than having the next thing be interesting to you, and that is if the next thing enrages you. That anger drives engagement more than interest. So there's a biological kind of a push in that direction, because people, once they start getting angry and start getting emotional, they start feeling a need for reassurance and it's confirmation bias and all this other stuff. So that's a problem. But there are so many hopeful signs. To me, in the depth of the Biden years, when all of this stuff was really going on, I comforted myself by saying you cannot beat the biology out of people, and you can't. And so this leads me to wanting to talk about something that's been on my mind quite a lot lately, and that's Gen Z. So Gen Z are the young adults now, and they've been mocked ever since I heard the term Gen Z. They were raised by over-attentive parents. They were given this the self-esteem movement where everybody gets a trophy.
Nobody participation trophy. Right.
And it turned them into emotionally very weak people who seem to complain a lot. And I spent a number of years thinking, my God, this is the worst generation we've ever seen. Weakest and least capable. And I was really wrong about them. I was wrong about them for two reasons. First of all, I was wrong about them because they didn't ask for that education that was foisted on them by their parents. They didn't ask to not get participation trophies. When they would play games like baseball or something, the adults will say we're not keeping score, but the kids were keeping score because there's that. But the real reason that I owe them such a large apology is because they have been. This is the worst case of generational child abuse that I think has ever been inflicted on any generation in history, because Gen Z, especially young males, especially young white males, have been so socially conditioned against their biology that they are living in a state of perpetual anxiety and a kind of hopelessness. They're looking for something that every other generation of young men got, and that is acceptance into the tribe, acceptance into the culture, and they've been denied it. They've been told that masculinity is toxic. They've been told that young boys are just defective girls who can't pay attention. They've been told that all men are potential rapists. They've been told all these things, and they just check out. There's a social movement now. It's gaining popularity every day. It's called MGTOW. It stands for MGTOW, men going their own way. We're not dealing with these chicks anymore. We've got hookup culture. We've got Tinder and so on. So maybe we'll see them on Tuesday night at 2:00 in the morning. But then they're gone, and we're not dealing with them because we don't need this feminist, left-wing, constant criticism and harpyism and so on.
And I think those are the people who really signed up to Charlie Kirk's message.
Yes. And Charlie Kirk is largely responsible for this, but this is where my entire attention is right now, Dr. Bob, and probably will be for the rest of my life. Young, white, heterosexual males in 2020 voted one way, and in 2024 they moved to the right. Do you know how much they moved to the right? Like a 7 or 8% move to the right would be significant, be astonishing. 36 points. 36 points between 20 and 24. Young, white, heterosexual men have moved from Democrats to Republicans. Now, the bad news is that the Democrats haven't done the Republicans haven't done a single thing to attract them. They just can't take the Democratic politics anymore, which demonizes them. But we've never given them anything to actually come towards. We've never actually said, here's what we believe in. Never. So this is kind of my mission. But I saw something the other day that was so heartbreaking, and you really had to hear the emotional tone. It was a 25-minute video from a member of Gen Z, a young male, and he was talking about Jordan Peterson and how disappointed he was. He said when he was younger and during the pandemic, Jordan, and I don't mean to pile on Jordan Peterson has opened up millions of eyes. But what this young man was saying is that the Jordan Peterson of today was not the Jordan Peterson of 2017. The Jordan Peterson that they grew up with talked about stoicism, making your bed, going out, getting a job, dealing with the fact that you're a man, your job is to provide for your family. It was a call to manhood, not to masculinity, to manhood.
Yeah.
Right? And he was the messenger of this. And this person was saying how hard it was for him to watch Jordan Peterson become more wishy-washy on things, more concerned with his fashion, more concerned with his look, more concerned with all of this. And I'm not saying this to knock Jordan Peterson. I'm saying this because the amount of longing and profound sadness in that young man's voice led me to realize that this
Needs somebody.
group, yes,
Needs somebody to support.
this group,
right. Somebody
needs,
to follow.
Yes.
Right.
And in my opinion, this is the demographic that matters. You and I don't deal with, we deal with reality the way reality is. I started flying, I saw the Thunderbirds when I was 5, wanted to be a fighter pilot, wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. I started in gliders. I flew experimental airplanes. I've got 1,000 hours and an instrument rating. And if you go to an airport and you look at who signs up for flight school, it is 95% young white men. There's nothing keeping any people away. There's nobody barring the doors. Everybody's welcome, in fact, enthusiastically welcome. And I like to say, if you're a young woman looking for a man, go to a flight school. If you're a young man looking for a woman, go to an equestrian event, because it's the exact opposite.
I know about horses and women who are into horses. Yeah.
But this demographic, young white straight men, is the demographic that essentially built the world. And they are the remnant that has to be preserved. I don't know what it is. I do know that there's no barriers keeping other people out of these professions like engineers and so on. But these are the people who are really lost, because they're the only ones that don't get a victim card of any kind. They don't get the gay card. They don't get the woman card. They don't get the person of color card. They are absolutely on their own in the desert, and all of these arrows are raining down on them, and they are the ones that built this civilization, without question. They need
mentoring.
to be, yes, and they need to belong. They need a sense of belonging.
Well, Charlie Kirk did that.
He did, and Charlie Kirk opened up a lot of eyes, millions of eyes, and now the question is, what are they going to watch? In a vacuum, they are drawn to people that I consider to be ranging from unpleasant to despicable. I think Nick Fuentes, because Fuentes is maniacally self-assured. And even though he's wrong about the things that he's wrong about, which is just about everything, he has the confidence of basically saying, this is true and screw everybody else. The other guy I was thinking of is that British guy with a shaved head, Andrew Tate.
I don't know either of these.
I think it's Andrew Tate. His view of masculinity is you have to have lots and lots of Porsches and be completely, built up and have 15 women in your stable, that kind of thing. These kind of ideas are attractive to people who are out there wandering, looking for something, because they're confident.
I see.
And they're providing a sense of assuredness, and Gen Z sees strength in this. But neither one of them are good models. They that's all they've got. The challenge is to create something that they are naturally attracted to. Look, I don't know, I'm wasting all this time. It's very simple. These kids don't have dads, and they never have. And the single greatest.
You don't mean that they came from broken homes. You mean they didn't have a father who was a leader.
Many of them came from broken homes, and many more came from homes where dad was beaten in submission by the whole feminist thing.
Right.
Yeah. So they're desperate for it, and these kind of people provide a certain. Their bombast inspires a sense that, well, this guy really believes in what he's doing, and so they're looking for people who believe in something.
Strong
this is the appeal of Islam in Europe. One of the reasons that Christian churches are in England have 25 people in attendance is because the Church of England sets up a back room where the crosses are taken down and crescents are up there so Muslims can come and pray here too. Who wants that kind of religion? Who wants it? If you don't even believe your own religion, why the hell should I believe your religion?
Right. My God, I didn't know that.
So Islam is in my opinion, the most destructive force ever been unleashed on this planet. But they have absolute certainty in themselves, and this draws people who are not counterbalanced by a robust Christianity or a robust Judaism.
Anything.
Yeah, anything. Right. So the power vacuum is filled by the people who act the loudest. What we had as a country is we had John Wayne.
Yeah. Right.
We had John Wayne. And John Wayne, for my dad's generation, I'm telling you, a lot of guys went ashore on Iwo Jima. A lot of guys went ashore into machine gun fire because they didn't want to look bad to John Wayne. I mean this from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the power of having something to look up to believe
this
in.
is what a man is,
Right.
and this is how a man acts. And I'm more of a Gary Cooper fan, but Gary Cooper in High Noon is the American, in my opinion, he's the absolute essence of what masculinity is. He's not a braggart. He's not intentionally violent. He is going to protect the society, and when the society lets him down because everybody chickens out, he does it anyway because that's what a man does. And when you have Gary Coopers and John Waynes and Jimmy Stewarts and all of these guys to look up to, young men have, whether they have natural leaders for fathers or not, they have a cultural identity.
Affinity.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, an affinity. They want to be that. Luke Skywalker was that for entire generation of millennials, the generation older than Gen Z. Luke Skywalker was that guy. I'm older than that. For me, Captain Kirk was that guy. That's who I want to be.
Kirk.
I want to be Captain Kirk.
Captain
I want to be a guy who's powerful and in command of himself. Right? He's got his own emotions under control, and he represents everything that I want to be. And so when you destroy these in the culture, intentions, not accidentally,
Right.
when you destroy them and when you start doing things like taking like white superheroes and casting them as either females or as blacks or as something else, what you're saying to these young men is that you have nothing.
Yeah, James Bond is now a black woman.
Right. James Bond, perfect example, right?
Yeah.
If James Bond is a black woman, then what the hell do young people see? This is not an accident.
No, that's right.
You take away all of the aspirational images
Right.
of heroism, individuality, rebellion against authority, self-sufficiency, commitment to your family. You know, you work 3 jobs. Yeah, I work 3 jobs. Why do you work 3 jobs? Because I got a family to feed. That's why I work 3 jobs. I got married very late in life. Very late. I was 57 when I got married.
Ooh,
yeah,
that is late.
Very late.
I thought I was late.
I
was
didn't
41.
get to be charming until I was in my 50s.
Yeah.
So I had to spend a little time, flexing some muscles I didn't even know I had. But what I came to realize is what most men realize much, much earlier, and that is that the best money I ever spend is money on my wife and my wife's family. The best feeling I ever have is the feeling that I have paid the rent, paid the bills, done these other things. These things gratify me in a way that nothing else, not even really acing a great piece of work, comes quite close to the same sense that being a man and fulfilling your responsibilities.
Taking charge,
yes.
taking care.
And young men need this. And the problem is well, when I was dating in Los Angeles, people would say to me, "What's it like dating in Los Angeles, especially as a conservative?" I said, "It's simple. The men are weak and the women are crazy. The weak men make the women crazy, and the crazy women make the men weak. And this is not how it's supposed to be." So there's this enormous cohort of the most valuable people. I'm not talking about morally before God. I'm just saying in terms of contribution to civilization. This is the cohort that builds things and gets things done. And they're wandering out there, and they know they don't want the Democrats, but
We need to give them an alternative. You know, in previous speeches, you've pointed out that conservatives have a great message. America is a great message. It's unique in the world. Virtually every important breakthrough in science, technology, and medicine, those breakthroughs are made in America by Americans. And as we saw during the time when our borders were open, hundreds of thousands of people in the world try to come here. It's not because we're an inherently racist country. It's because America is the land of opportunity. It's still a place where talent, effort, and innovation can lead to success, regardless of birth or race or class. But despite having a great message, conservatives rarely articulate that message. Why?
that's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
It's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, they'll be called racist or something.
or
worse.
or whatever.
Nazis.
Nazis. If you're financially successful, that means you're obviously So this is the great Marxist argument, right? Is that the Marxist argument is if one person has more than other people, if one person has a big slice of the pie, that means somebody else had a smaller slice of the pie. Capitalism says, let's just make more pies. How many pies do you want? We can make enough pies for everybody to be sick of pie. Right? You'll never want to eat another pie in your life if you just get out of our way and let us do what we're good at. And so all of this stuff is demonized emotionally, and people take it in through entertainment. That's the needle that gets it under the skin. Comes goes right past the cortex. I saw Bowling for Columbine in a movie theater in Santa Monica, surrounded by liberals. This is Michael Moore's movie.
Leftists.
Yeah. Yes, leftists, exactly. I was the only liberal in the room. And when I came out, I was walking to my car and I thought, I got to say, man, Michael Moore made some really good points in there. He really did. And I'm driving home, and slowly the cortex starts coming back. It's like, wait a minute. Michael Moore is saying that this black woman is on a bus at 5 o'clock in the morning going to serve white people. And it's like, she's going to her job. Everybody goes to their job. I went to jobs. I started working when I was 13. I haven't stopped since then. And I realized how skilled they are at turning vices into virtues and virtues into vice. And the problem we have in the conservative movement is we don't take this entertainment thing seriously. We think it's trivial. Conservatives have thought that they could just walk away from the pop culture, but that was a gigantic mistake. It is abandoning, it's not abandoning a field or a compartment. It's rowing away from the ship. Right?
It's the whole enchilada.
Yes. How many, I think my friend Jeremy Boring said this about Mitt Romney. I think Jeremy said, how many songs do you suppose Mitt Romney ever downloaded on iTunes? Probably none. Barack Obama, sure. This is the language of the pop culture. Again, the good news is you can't beat the biology out of people. You can't. There's so many things that just pop up like mushrooms that just give me like joy and make me feel better at night. And here's one of these little things. They asked these super progressive women, super left-wing women, what they found attractive in men. And not one of them said anything about leftist men. Not one of them said, I like a feeling man, I like a guy who cries, I like a guy who shares his emotions. No, every single one of them said, I want somebody strong, I want somebody in control, I want
No kidding.
These are the blue-haired feminists that are saying this, right?
Wow.
Because you can't beat the biology out of people. It's how they're wired, which is why they haven't succeeded and why they can't succeed. And when they go down, they're going to do as much damage as they can. And our job is to make sure that we have paladins out there who are prepared to fight them on their terms. Good men who are not afraid of them. And so their entire philosophy is self-defeating. They don't produce anything. Critical theory is not a theory. I mentioned this at the event where I first met you. It's a negative space. It's like, here's what we are. We build things. Well, we attack people that build things. So what are you about? I'm not about anything.
What are you for?
Not about anything.
What are you for?
Yeah, nothing. They're not for anything. They're just against everything. And nobody wants to live in that kind of nihilistic moral vacuum.
Angry.
And all we have to, and angry.
Yeah.
Well,
leftists are always angry. They're not happy people.
Which brings me back what I said to the beginning. I think they ought to make fun, the national anthem of the United States of America.
Bring back the Beach Boys.
Because we're selling freedom. We're selling fun. If we had the common sense to stop arguing about policy and just start talking about who's more fun to be with, it'd be over.
Bill, fantastic discussion tonight. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I want to thank you so much more for continuing to speak out to promote the values that have made America so special. The values of freedom, personal responsibility, and pride in our country.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. It was a pleasure being here.
If you enjoyed today's conversation with Bill Whittle, I encourage you to explore his work in more detail. You can go to his website, billwhittle.com, all one word, where you can read his latest essays and explore his video series, or go to the Bill Whittle channel on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and you'll be automatically notified of future episodes in this series.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. If you enjoyed these interviews with some of today's most influential thought leaders, please follow and rate the show on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget, you can also watch each episode on YouTube as well. We'll see you next time.